you're trying to suggest what you're trying to do is support the Gove's agenda here, which is there are absolutely issues within these schools, and I think everyone, including the Hands Off Birmingham School campaign and others, have acknowledged that there are certain people who should even stand down as a consequence of some of the revelations in this report and reports that will come. The issue, however, is trying to rebrand this as an issue of extremism in order to expand this idea of extremism being non-violent ideas.
Or indeed Nick Griffin had been asked to come along and speak in a school.
Neither of the equivalents of those two individuals were invited to speak in these schools.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, Shady Al-Sulaiman is a man who's called... What?
His views are worse than...
What are his views?
Well, anyone who supports Al-Qaeda in public, anyone who supports the ideology of Al-Qaeda...
Who says he supports
Anyone
Al-Qaeda?
who supports the
I'm not defending him, but who says...
People being stoned to death.
He shouldn't be invited to address...
Are you saying he's not as bad as Geert Wilders and Nick Griffin? Wait, one at a time.
I'm absolutely saying he should be invited to address
You're saying he's not as bad as Geert Wilders or Nick Griffin?
I'm saying you can't compare the people who are speaking in these schools. I don't know about this particular speaker.
Mary, let me finish my point, please.
You can finish your point, but I'm saying to you, you have to allow people to speak in this country.
Yeah, allow me to speak then. Allow me to speak. Anyone who believes in stoning people to death, Nick Griffin has reprehensible views, but he doesn't believe that an adulteress should be stoned to death. Anyone who does should not be invited to a school. And nor should
Does that include Jewish rabbis?
And nor should...
Let's have a question. And the next on the list is Daniel Hannan, and I will come to you. I will come to you. No, not yet, please. Right, so please, there's a lot of people, a lot of very interesting people to talk to.
If we can all agree that Nick Griffin should not be invited to speak to children...
Of course he shouldn't, and neither should this speaker, but nobody said he should.
Can I finish my point? And if we can agree there, then we should also, by implication, agree that anyone who believes in ideas far more reprehensible should not be invited to speak at schools. It's a moot point. It's just not something we should even be debating.
Yes, it's a platitude.
The fact that we're defensive about that is illustrative of the problem.
Imagine a world where supporters of Al-Qaeda are invited to speak to school children, and we're told that's education. This isn't about religion. It's about dangerous ideas given a classroom platform. The real question is, how did we get here? And why are we so afraid to draw a line?
Let's talk about education. Let's take it away from the education debate, if I may. Majid Nawaz, on the subject of these views, surely schools should reflect the areas in which they are operating and the communities which they are serving. And if you have a community which is 95% Muslim, surely that should be the focus of the school. That sounds like a pretty Govian idea, doesn't it?
Well, put aside what Govian ideas are, I'm a secularist. I believe in religious neutral politics. I believe that despite a school being 98% Christian, 98% Muslim, which Parkview was, if it's a state school in a secular country such as Britain, then it mustn't be endorsing any form of religion as its official way of doing it. So, though I agree with Ajmal's critique of the education system, where I would respectfully disagree is that schools don't have any business teaching God consciousness. That's for the parents to do, and he's doing it very well with his own children. I know his family. But it's not a school's job to do that. And
so what has been going on, do you
What's been going on is people have been mixing, and not just wider society, Muslims themselves have been mixing two issues: social conservatism, and it's no one's business how religiously conservative anyone else is, and that's not extremism. But when you try and impose religious conservatism on any public secular institution, the imposition of that is what's extremism, and that's what's being taken, that's what's being objected to here. No one cares, frankly. I don't care, no one else cares. If someone covers their hair, if someone grows a beard, for religious reasons, no one cares, and if they do care, they're wrong.
But it's the imposition in a secular context. What about this row about this extremist who said some very, well, disobliging is not the right word, some disgusting things about, stoning people and death for apostates. He wasn't saying that in the school, was he? And you're a liberal, and you should. He wasn't talking about those things in the school. He was doing a general lecture on religion. So as a liberal, you should support his right to do that, shouldn't you?
Right. So are you a liberal? Yes, and I support the legal right for him to speak, even if I disagree with those views. Just as if he was saying racist or homophobic or any form of bigotry, if he's speaking in this way, he has a legal right to do so. That doesn't mean that I tolerate it in civil society. It means I challenge it. Just as I would challenge racism, just as I would challenge homophobia or anti-Semitism, I will challenge a Muslim who's calling for women to be stoned to death. I don't say put that person in prison. What I do say is that What I do say is that we must not confuse liberalism with tolerance. Any political agnostic can be tolerant of bigotry. A liberal will seek to liberalise. A liberal will say you are wrong for being racist or being homophobic.
Miriam Francois, so I see that you're pretty desperate to say something now, but just on the subject, if I may, if you'll allow me, of this particular gentleman, Shady Al-Sulaiman, who came into this school and he has these particular views. Do you support the right of the school to have him there and his right to go in and talk?
I think schools should be vetting the people who speak to children much more closely than clearly they have been. But I do take issue with the idea that this reflects some sort of radicalisation because some overzealous governors are wanting to impose social conservative mores within the school. I think the problem really is to do with the fact that this government and the government before it, in fact, has allowed schools to develop a much more independent ethos. And in fact, that allows academies and free schools to give governors a much greater say in how schools are run, in the ethos, in even how the curriculum is defined to some extent. So in doing so, it is effectively saying to communities, you can define your local ethos according to your own views. But then when it doesn't like the way in which communities form their own ethos, form their own curriculum...
That's what I meant by the sort of Govian principles.
It is absolutely Govian principles. And to be fair, the other issue is that this government really is playing a double speak here. It can't, on one hand, talk about the issue of cultural isolation and support faith schools. Faith schools develop all sorts of forms of cultural isolation. That isn't to say they should be promoted in any secular schools, but to suggest that's a form of extremism suggests this government is actually supporting forms of extremism in faith schools.
The conversation turns to schools specific, those where 90% or more of the students are Muslim. These aren't isolated communities. They're public institutions, funded by the state, shaping the next generation. But when the cultural and religious influence becomes absolute, what space is left for pluralism, for debate, for dissent?
Which it does. Bizarrely,
I don't want to have a faith school, non-faith school debate.
I understand that, and you don't want the whole education debate. Gove, for all his ills, has continued something that's been going on for decades in Britain, and that is there's an underlying law that says every school should have an act of worship. Every school child should have an act of worship. And I think that is nonsense. I completely agree with Majid that a secular approach to education is what...
like in France?
It is what's needed.
The British
but there are schools... If you go to local...
By whom is it needed? You mean that's what you want?
No, if you go to local...
There are, as it happens, quite a lot of conservative Christians in this country who object to the way...
There absolutely are people...
Let Peter finish, I'll come right back to you.
Who object to the way...
Wait, let Peter make his point, and then I will come back to you.
Thank you.
In good order.
Who object to the way in which Christianity has been stripped out of the state school system, despite the fact that it is supposed to be in the system following the 1944 Education Act. It's a legal requirement, and secularists in the education system quietly, and as far as I'm concerned, unlawfully, have removed Christianity from our schools. And we are, as a result, a spiritual desert as a country in which any kind of conservative religious opinion is constantly sneered at by people such as this gentleman as being extremist or otherwise unacceptable. Extremist is a non-word. It means nothing. It means opinion currently unfashionable. If you wish to discuss whether something is right or wrong, discuss that.
Marianne struggles to say Peter Hitchens does have a point.
Yeah, well, we might
Let me come back to Kevin. Kevin, respond to Peter. Then I want to speak to Douglas Murray. Kevin.
It doesn't surprise me that Christians say they're being marginalised or they're being not given the status that they want to have, because it's quite right, they shouldn't have that status. In Britain, forgetting about the Muslim issue, in Britain there are schools tomorrow who will open and teach their children about creationism. They will teach their children that evolution is a lie and a conspiracy. That is nonsense. And me as a taxpayer, I'm funding that.
Education is meant to broaden horizons, not narrow them. Yet here, it's becoming an echo chamber. If students hear only one world, how do they learn to question it? If faith-based norms dominate the classroom, what happens to the curriculum? Or to the students who quietly think different?
Well, let's get back to the state schools. Let's get back to this particular issue and the alleged extremism that has been going on. Not the Trojan horse context. We don't want to conflate two issues here. But Douglas Murray, you know, 95% of children in a particular area are of the Muslim faith. You were complaining in your article in The Spectator that in one primary school music was banned. That's kind of another issue. But raffles and tombolas were banned. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to encourage Muslim children to gamble? What's your problem with that? It should reflect the nature of the school.
So first they came for the tombolas.
For what?
Look, The problem
Gambling
going on
wrong
here,
in those communities.
The problem going on here is we're in the middle of a debate. I mean, the nation is going through something very substantial change, and I think that what we've been discussing in recent days and what we've been discussing this morning kind of reflects this. I mean, until very recently, you know, if you said to people, and it comes back to the British values thing as well, if you said to people until very recently, what is Britain, what are British values, you'd have got a fairly clear reply along the lines of, you know, a Protestant Christian country, we have institutions of church and state and monarchy and so on, which represent the country. As one of the results of mass immigration of recent decades, there has been a substantial change in the country. All sorts of good things have come from that, and some negatives have. But one of the things that has come from it is this confusion about what it is we are. We want to be open and tolerant, we want people to be able to practice their faiths, we want people to be able to express themselves and live the lives they want to live. What we're finding it very hard to do at the moment, and I mean the French secular example has already come up, is to work out where our lines are drawn as a nation, because they're not clear at the moment.
It's impossible to draw those lines, isn't it?
It may prove impossible. It may be that we do something like the French state did and try to draw very clear lines. That's what you've heard in recent days. There's a bit of it already this morning, that, you know, there's a problem with some schools that are actually, you know, state secular schools that happen to have had...
How bad are these problems?
The problems exposed in Sir Michael Wilshaw's report are pretty serious, and there's more to come.
Really, what's so serious in the report?
I think, for instance, I mean, Wilshire himself says that these children are at risk of cultural isolation. There have been findings of children, for instance, being taught in assembly to chant anti-Christian chants and so on. This is very unpleasant sectarian stuff.
Did you know that none of the kids were spoken to?
But
did you know that none of the pupils in that school were spoken to during that so-called investigation?
And there are white schools
the teachers were not spoken to either. You come to Stamford Hill, where I live, well, not far away from our house. We have a particular community, the Jewish community, who live in a very isolated way. Nobody says anything about them. I have no problem with that. Hold on, I have no problem with that. If that's what they want to do, that's their choice. But we don't create a big fuss over the Jewish communities, especially that particular community living in that way. Why cause a fuss over a report that was made out of a hoax letter,
You acknowledge there are issues.
I did say at the beginning.
Rabbi Laura.
First of all, you're talking about faith schools. We're talking about state schools. Yes, that's the first thing. Yeah. Second thing...
There are many of those schools are funded by the state.
You're not going to interrupt me. Stop. The second thing is what should be taught in schools. Actually, I think you should be teaching about religions. So that doesn't mean you have to believe. But if we don't know what other people believe, we won't have the literacy to challenge the idea of what you mentioned, you used your language of the true faith.
But it's not just...
So I would say there are faiths out there, and Britain is about acknowledging truths of faith. And the third thing is about what you tolerate. The third thing is about what we tolerate. I don't think that everything goes, and I think that if there is incitement to hatred, to racial hatred, or gender hatred, or about sexuality, actually you do restrict that.
We talk about extremism as if it's something foreign, something distant. But what happens when it's sewn into the fabric of state school? When radical speakers are brought in under the guise of cultural representation, what exactly are we teaching? Facts or fear? Open inquiry or indoctrination? The classroom should be a space for ideas to clash, not a pipeline for ideology. And when kids are taught to revere hardline preachers more than critical thought, we're not just failing them, we're endangering.
Douglas Murray, you can't force people to believe things. You can't shoehorn people into a particular Douglas Murray-shaped, David Cameron-shaped Britishness. Can you?
No, I mean, this is part of... By the way, just very quickly, I mean, on this matter of this, I mean, I do think that one of the things...
But address that issue about...
Okay, can I just mention first, one of the interesting things that's come up in recent days and weeks, I think, over this whole Trojan horse business, is I think that some Muslims in this country, particularly a lot of Muslim spokespeople, a lot of Muslim groups have been furious about these revelations and are now denying them. They're still denying them. And this is something like happened in the Catholic Church over the paedophilia scandal. People just don't want to admit it. They don't want dirty laundry to be aired in public. They genuinely think that, and that's why there's still this denial even now. There's an official report by Sir Michael Wilshaw. It's found some very disturbing things. Some people still think that it don't exist.
Is this the same Sir Michael Wilshaw who just did a U-turn of what Gov did or didn't tell him?
But Miriam, the thing, either you think this has all been, do you think this has all been made up?
I think
do you think it's all been made up?
What I actually know is that there are serious serious governance issues, there have been internal administrative issues, whether there are issues of extremism, which is what you're peddling, and what in fact the publication you work for is peddling by publishing one of the worst covers in this country that I have ever seen, suggesting that young children are vehicles for extremism and terrorism. You should be ashamed to be associated.
Daniel, can I just give, this is a very good example of the problem. Miriam, you are a very prominent spokesperson, you're a voice, you're a very prominent convert to Islam, you have a voice.
I don't call myself a convert, so don't call me one.
Whatever it is you want to call yourself. You have a voice. Here are some problems that are coming up, which have been exposed in schools, that seem to be teaching very seriously unpleasant things, and they're being taught by some extremist Muslims. Why, in this debate, you first of all deny that that is going on, and secondly, think the problem is a spectator cover cartoon.
I've never denied that there are issues.
I do not understand.
On these three,
the problem is not the spectator cover.
I think the issue is you're
Miriam
trying
first. I want to speak to Daniel Hannan.
Yeah.
Miriam, respond to that.
You're trying to suggest what you're trying to do is support the Gove's agenda here, which is there are absolutely issues within these schools, and I think everyone, including the Hands Off Birmingham School campaign and others, have acknowledged that there are certain people who should even stand down as a consequence of some of the revelations in this report and reports that will come. The issue, however, is trying to rebrand this as an issue of extremism in order to expand this idea of extremism being non-violent ideas.
So the debate sharpens. Should extremists have a platform in our schools? Should those who defend violence, segregation, or theocratic rule be allowed to speak to our children? Some argue that banning them is censorship. Others say that permitting them is insanity.
Nick Griffin had been asked to come along and speak in a school.
Neither of the equivalents of those two individuals were invited to speak in these schools.
Well, I'm sorry, Shady Al-Sulaiman is a man who's called... What?
His views are worse than...
What are his views?
Well, anyone who supports Al-Qaeda in public, anyone who supports the ideology of Al-Qaeda...
Who says he supports
anyone
Al-Qaeda?
Who supports the
I'm not defending him, but who says...
He's not being stoned to death.
He should be invited to address...
Are you saying he's not as bad as Gert Wilders and Nick Griffin? Wait, one at a time.
I'm absolutely saying he should be invited to address schools.
You're saying he's not as bad as Gert Wilders or Nick Griffin?
I'm saying you can't compare the people who are speaking in these schools. I don't know about this particular speaker.
Mary, let me finish my point, please.
You can finish your point, but I'm saying to you, you have to allow people to speak in this country.
Allow me to speak. Allow me to speak. Anyone who believes in stoning people to death, Nick Griffin has reprehensible views, but he doesn't believe that an adulteress should be stoned to death. Anyone who does should not be invited to a school. And nor should
does that include Jewish rabbis?
Let's have a question. And the next on the list is Daniel Hannan, and I will come to you. No, not yet, please. Please, there's a lot of people, a lot of very interesting people to talk to.
If we can all agree that Nick Griffin should not be invited to speak to children...
Of course he shouldn't, and neither should this speaker, but nobody said he should.
Can I finish my point? And if we can agree there, then we should also, by implication, agree that anyone who believes in ideas far more reprehensible should not be invited to speak at schools. It's a moot point. It's just not something we should even be debating.
Yes, it's a platitude.
The fact that we're defensive about that is illustrative of the problem.
I'll come to you with a question.
Nobody's defensive about it.
No, Daniel Hannan is next. I want to bring it back. Peter Hitchens, thank you. I want to bring it back. And I think you've both, with huge respect, dealt with that particular issue. And we're going to park it for now. Daniel Hannan, MEP, freedom. We saw, of course, the recent European elections, a certain swing in a certain way and a huge discomfort across Europe about certain things that are happening. But this is the crux here, isn't it? In our debate about tolerating intolerance. Where do we draw that line? What is the definition of freedom? What is Britishness?
Well, you tolerate objectionable behaviour up to the point of incitement. You tolerate eccentricity up to the point of madness. You tolerate offensiveness up to the point of harassment. Toleration means you tolerate. It means you tolerate things that you find utterly appalling. What are British values? Well, you said at the beginning, Nikki, today is the 799th anniversary of the signing of Magna Carta. You could do a lot worse than the spare, terse inscription that appears on the Magna Carta memorial in Runnymede. Freedom under law. If you wanted to distill British values into one phrase, and in that phrase is incorporated all the things that through the years made this country a better place to live than the authoritarian alternative.
The universal.
It implies regular elections, uncensored newspapers, equality between the sexes, jury trials, habeas corpus, free speech, free assembly, free conscience.
So where there is not equality between the sexes, and we have this segregation row, whether it's going on or not in public places, and people's belief that there should be modesty and there should be some form of separation. We hear that from the authoritarian right-wing group Hizb ut-Tahrir. What should we do in that situation? How do we clamp down on it?
I agree with what Majid said. You tolerate those views. Tolerating those views is not the same as teaching them in school.
Absolutely.
Every child born in this country, wherever his or her parents came from, is the heir to that same birthright that began with the Great Charter 800 years ago. And we cannot allow our own sons and daughters in this country, wherever their parents came from, to be denied their portion of our patrimony as a free society. That is something that should go without saying. Of course, people can have, once they've left school, they can have whatever eccentric opinions they want. But teaching people that they are not just a random collection of individuals born to a different random collection of individuals, but that they are British citizens, that we're bound together regardless of creed, regardless of race, that we have an identity as British subjects, and we're connected one to another, that is something that should go for all our children.
It's not about silencing people. It's about responsibility. Free speech isn't a free pass to radicalize the young. When someone openly supports groups like Al-Qaeda or preaches hatred of non-believers, that's not dialogue, that's recruitment. If we wouldn't allow a neo-Nazi into a classroom, why make exceptions when the rhetoric comes dressed in religious language?
I've got you all in mind. Peter Hitchens, is that something that we should fight for, the democratically achieved aspiration to and reality of liberalism?
It's fascinating the way all these British values merchants are so coy about the real basis of the liberty which we enjoy, which is the particular form of Protestant Christianity which this country adopted, which created in people the strength of conscience, the self-restraint, the belief very strongly that law should be above power because law derives ultimately from God. That is what actually makes this country what it is, but they won't talk about that because many of them are not Christians, many of them are active secularists, and many of them are nominal Christians, and they don't really believe these things. That's what made us what we are and made us the kind of country that we are. And to try and generalize this into some kind of human rights blancmange is to make a fundamental mistake about how it came about and what we would need to defend.
And what's
if we wished to preserve it. The interesting thing is I don't think a lot of the people, the loudest noises who go on about this, actually do particularly wish to preserve it, because many of them are allied with the principal political lobby which has undermined it most of all, which is the lobby which has been in favour of open borders, mass immigration and multiculturalism, which has made it so difficult to sustain this country as it was.
Ajmal and Marine have just fallen out with you. They were with you.
Peter, what you just said
Wait, Daniel Hanna.
Being responsible for that is just false history. It is true that a measure of our individualist culture can be said to have a Protestant basis, and that's.
Why do you think I was aiming that at you?
No, I don't think it was aimed at me. But
it was. Actually.
But when look at the phrase that appears in the Great Charter: the law of the land, not the King's law, not God's law, but a law that was immanent in the people and the territory. That was the genius of this country. That was our unique achievement, and that's been our greatest export, our supreme contribution to the happiness of mankind. The idea that the law is above the government, the biggest guy in the country doesn't get to tell other people what to do. He is bound by something bigger than him, and that is not a divine book. It's not a prelate or a prince. It's the law inherent in all of us as a common
not a single person present at Runnymede 799 years ago today did not believe in the Christian God or believe that law derived from God.
That's nonsense.
I think there is
Nor do they believe in equality between men and women. Adnan's been waiting. Don't worry. We've got time. This is one debate in an entire hour. Adnan Rashid, I just wonder, should we not be really careful about what we teach our children, and we should be teaching all children, because we rise about this, the great literature of the, Romeo and Juliet, the great Shakespearean plays. Otherwise, they are kind of denuded and they're disconnected from the rest of our culture, and they need more cultural enrichment than just a sacred text. Do you not agree with that?
I agree with that 100%. We must teach our children how to live in this world. This is a very complex, multicultural world, and we live in it as a family. Like this is a perfect demonstration of a family. We are all a family. We disagree with each other.
A dysfunctional family.
Sometimes severely. I find some of the views here very objectionable. But
views define objectionable?
Majid Nawaz comes out, he's attacking Muslims for believing in things that the Jews believe in. There are Jewish rabbis who believe in exactly the same things that Sheikh who came to lecture in the school. And have you ever
what
seen...
aspect of belief did he attack?
I want to ask Majid, do you see anything wrong with the Jewish rabbis?
What?
Do you see anything wrong with them?
That's Majid?
Exactly.
Well, no, let's hear his answer.
The point is...
That was a big question. Let's hear...
Okay, Majid.
Wait, no. Let's hear it. You've got another question. Big answer. Majid.
He doesn't see anything wrong with it. So the Jews can believe in the Torah.
Adnan,
what there's a problem with the Muslims believing in the Quran.
What aspect... Hang on, wait. What aspect of Muslim belief did he decry?
Everything he picks on in the Muslim belief. Wait. Let me finish. Everything he picks on in the Muslim belief is believed by the Jews. The Jews believe in the Torah. And Torah has verses. I mean, they believe in the 5 books. I challenge Majid to come out in public to condemn, to criticize the Jews for believing in things the Muslims believe in. He will never do that, because that will destroy his political career. He will be accused of anti-Semitism. I don't want him to do that. I defend the rights of the Jews to believe in what they want to believe in. Likewise, we as Muslims...
Wait, Laura, in a second. But just on this particular issue, I saw your news... Wait.
This is where liberalism gets tested. Do we stand for something? Or is tolerance just a blank check? If we can't draw the line between free thought and fanaticism, especially when children are involved, what future are we building?